John.
Whoa, Nick, week 2. How are you? How are things in the United Kingdom?
Crazy week. So
tell me about your week. Tell me about how you've squeezed in Hallmarked Man in your week.
So I read it in the first week, just about ready for our previous episode. But this is a plot, isn't it? I mean, it is so complicated. We've got Cormoran's story, we've got Robin's story, we've got the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 potential victims. We have at least 2, probably 3 potential perpetrators. We've got the romantic mix. There's an awful lot going in. So although we bravely did our first impressions episode last week, I can't say that I had the plot straight in my head. So I've gone straight into a reread. And so this week I've been listening to the audiobook. So that's 30 hours of listening.
31.
31 hours of listening squeezed into a full working week. So I only listen to my audiobook because, again, I'm so easily distracted. When I'm walking, I can listen and concentrate, and when I'm driving. Now, I don't have 31 hours of walking and driving in any working week. My factory is literally 20 minutes away, and I take the dog for a walk 1 hour every morning, and on the weekends I'll take a 3. Although I've been a bit more adventurous, 3 or 4 hours. So what I do, I've been listening to audiobooks ever since the Christmas Pig, that full cast recording came out, and Patricio, God bless him, recommended this to me, and I've been hooked on audiobooks ever since. But I find the normal spoken voice is too slow for me. So I've experimented over the last few years that if I listen to most recordings, and certainly Robert Glenister, if I listen to him at 1.7 speed,
oh my gosh,
I can still concentrate on the plot, and it's quick enough that I don't get distracted. It takes up all of my sort of mental faculty, other than just the mechanics of walking or driving. And in that way, on average, I get through 32 or 33 hours worth of audiobooks every week. So that's what I did.
Wow. Can't imagine. I promised at the end of our last episode, which went up Monday morning.
Yeah.
Tuesday morning, Monday morning. And I promised that I was going to start charting the book.
Yeah.
And so I had to use the text. So I charted the first 13 chapters, part 1, and I charted the epilogue. And as you'd expect, there's a latch, beginning and end. And as you may not have expected, there's almost a perfect chiastic structure to part 1. So then I started reading part 6, and I started to chart it. And then I decided to read through the thing, and I was doing some audiobook stuff. And I haven't gotten through my second reading yet. And what I came to the conclusion was exactly what you've said, is that we have these 5 candidates for who's in the vault. And Rowling said about Career of Evil, she says, "Oh, I started to write this book, and why did I come up with 3 suspects?" It was actually 4 if you included the police candidate. Yeah. But and she said it was so complicated, I had to keep all these 3 going. And now she's got 5. and the Robin strike thing is so woven into the search and the mystery that to chart this thing is really crazy. I found myself just starting to list all the names of people, because eventually I want to do a names post. And I'm up to like 50 names.
Yeah.
We get Trevik Nancaro. Whoa, where's that coming from? And we get but we have to talk about that. And of course, Lita Strike's name isn't Lita Strike. Now we find out it's Margaret Nancaro. I'm like, okay, well, there's a shocker. All the Christian symbolism of that. And then we get, what Albie Simpson White. I mean,
Yeah.
hey, waving the white flag, Albedo time. Everybody gets on board with that. And then there's Danny DeLeon, Daniel and the Lions. I'm like, oh my God. So all the names are like distraction.
Yeah.
You don't know if that's distraction, misdirection or what it is.
I know.
But when you're just trying to remember all the names.
Yeah.
And
I can't be.
Which one of
the
the bodies? Which one of the bodies do they line up with? Is it Rupert or is it Danny DeLeon or is it?
But I can't be the only one that read Danny and thought, who the hell is Danny? It's another great advantage of the electronic version is you can search the name and go back to refresh your memory on
yeah, I found myself begging, thinking to myself, when is Strike Fans going to put up the damn index to this thing so that I can just quickly find who this person is? Come on, Strike Fans. Strike Fandom is counting on you to post that thing. Anyway, that's yeah, it's been a pretty frustrating week. And then an hour after you posted this episode, Rolling drops a tweet linked to a Strike-Ellacott files tweet.
Yes, I think so. So Strike-Ellacott files, who it turns out looks like they've all read the book on the day of release, which is a Herculean effort, released a tweet saying Strike-Ellacott Files is no longer a podcast. We are an emotional support group. And I think it's fair to say, although again I didn't see it until a week after they posted it, I think it's fair to say they are representing a fair majority of the fandom out there.
Yeah, because Rolling felt not only obliged to respond to them and say, I never told you it was going to be easy, but then she repeated that phrase, almost a week after publication, saying, basically, here's comfort to those people that were, she said, emotional trauma? Emotional trauma from the book. I really don't understand that. How do you read that staircase scene and get emotional trauma out of it? But we'll talk about that. But and then she posts, she says, here's something. How does she phrase it? Here's a picture about what's going to happen in Strike 9.
I have it here. I won't say I have it here handy, but I certainly have it here. So I retweeted almost as soon as it came up. Because of your work on it. So she says, public service announcement for Strike and Robin fans, many of whom are saying the same thing in my mentions. I'm sorry about the emotional trauma, but I never said this would be easy. Hashtag the Hallmark Man. Strike 9 is well underway, and this picture may have some relevance for it. Now, there was a bit of a scramble for the fans out there. Now, I was in work at the time, so I shouldn't have been doing this, but I knew there was going to be a scramble to identify the picture. I don't have the classics background that you have, John, so you probably looked at that and knew immediately what it was depicting.
I used it in my post in 2021.
Fortunately for me, it's this painting has been widely misattributed, both to the wrong artist and what they are depicting. So this is by William Adolphe Bouguereau, a French gentleman, I assume, painted in 1889. It is L'amour et Psyche, so Cupid and Psyche, and it is specifically Psyche ascending. So this is Cupid rescuing Psyche. Now, the only way that I know the phrase Cupid and Psyche is because a very dear friend of mine has been talking about Cupid and Psyche since, and we've argued about this as well, John, but it was 2021, that first post, that Cupid and Psyche, is Cupid and Psyche the template for Cormoran and Robin?
Yeah, again, that was fun to see that. I mean, it's been for a podcast website that doesn't do predictions, Nick, we're really drilling stuff here. I mean,
we're on you're on a roll.
I think Charlotte was murdered, so I think we're on a roll. But so anyway, when that came out, I was obviously distracted by that. The moderator channels were full of conversation about Robin's trials versus Psyche's trials, because this is Psyche ascendant. That's the end of the myth almost. Are they going to die? It's really a lot of fun conversation, and we planned a show around this.
Yeah.
And it was a good show. It was a great plan, and I sent it out to our paid subscribers because they get to see this stuff well beforehand, and I mean not well beforehand, but they get to see it beforehand and to send their feedback. Got some great feedback, especially Justin Clavitt sent me a wonderful note, and we're going to have. I'm going to invite him after we record this onto the show to talk about his ideas. Sorry if I've just revealed the name of a paid subscriber. Is that a bad thing? We're not supposed to do that. Anyway, and then this morning I woke up. It's Orthodox New Year, incidentally. Happy New Year, Nick.
Happy New Year.
It's the indiction. Anyway, that's more than people want to know. But anyway, I woke up with the idea, oh my goodness, there's other stuff we have to talk about, And so I quickly typed up some questions and sent it out to the paid subscriber list and see if they wanted us to do that one instead. And I got an immediate call back from Kelly Loomis, my buddy on the West Coast, and she says, you have to do this one. And I get it, because this is kind of a time urgency thing. We want to talk about some of fan theories, but I want to talk about fan theories, but why we do it, especially is because I'm really sincere about predictions being a waste of time. But, there's also, of the 7 tools in Rolling Shed, the one that's most neglected, I think, because it's the most obvious, is the big twist. Is, in Russian formalist language, that's Authority or defamiliarization. It's supposed to be that big shock that just hits you where everything's turned upside down, and all of a sudden you understand what the real story is, not the story that somebody pretended it was, and the detective or Nancy Drew and the 2 Hardy Boys have to figure out at Hogwarts. It's suddenly what it really is. And you get that shock and you have that penetrating insight. And that's the whole point of Chazette and Fabula, which Rowling really understands about plot and narrative, is that's the artistry of the thing. And that's the primary Shed tool that Rowling is after, to make you a more penetrating reader. That's Jane Austen 101. Okay. Yeah. Now that the reason we talk about predictions here isn't because we have this, we're looking for that big red pencil from our teacher, because, Rowling never sends me a red pencil when we drill things correctly. Nick, I didn't get anything for the ectopic pregnancy, fine. Nothing.
Are you sure? Because I've got half an idea that Cupid and Psyche post was your red pencil.
Maybe. Especially as it seemed to have been couched in a message to the Strike fans. Maybe you should be reading this stuff. Oh, that was Nick's idea, folks. The Harpies, don't be pecking at me, Harpies.
Now, John, play nice.
Okay. Anyway, I mean, really, the Strike-Ellacott files people and Strike fans. I mean, I don't listen to other podcasts because I don't want to get confused with other people's ideas and things. But I'm glad you do, Nick. It's great. I can always ask you what they're talking about. But the Strike fan site, I'm on there all the time looking up stuff, trying to find out, where this character first appeared and this kind of thing. Anyway, they just do a different thing than we do. But one of the things we do here is talk about, especially when a new book comes out, is where does Rowling have us leaning? Now, she writes inside this book, about the Masonic things, about it being misdirection, narrative misdirection. Well, that's the hallmark of of what Ostrogny is about, is that kind of shocking defamiliarization, is that you have to be leaning in one direction so that when it's shown to be something else, it's a shock. That it's been concealed creatively, and then when you see it, it's that way. So when you know that's one of Rowling's 7 signatures, what she does in her shed, when you read a new book and you find yourself leaning in one direction, it's probably the other thing. It's going to be the shocking thing. And so, when the chlamydia thing, people are like, oh, that was just a lucky hit. Well, it wasn't a lucky hit. The mythology, the psychomachia, and the narrative misdirection all pointed to Robin being sterile, that she was going to be the Artemis figure inside the books. That wasn't a mistake. That was reading with, the 7 tools in mind. Do these things always work? No, this is J.K. Rowling. You're not going to figure out everything she's doing. If I could do that, I wouldn't be interpreting her work. I'd be writing my own books. But this kind of thing is when you read Hallmark Man, you're going to see the better fan theories are going to be the ones that are about the most shocking thing possible, because Rowling has set us up for something else. I mean, Charlotte was murdered is definitely one of those theories. She's got 7 books setting you up to believe that Charlotte committed suicide. That's just not that's almost your definite clue that she didn't commit suicide, especially because all the suicides in the book so far haven't really been suicides. That's another one, right? So what do we see in this book from the very first chapter? That isn't that way. But before we get there, though, I want to talk about a fan theory. We're going to have a guest on the show, I hope very soon, Ed Shardlow, real Hog Pro, All Pro. And if you've been following the comments over at the Substack site, Ed has been laying out, forgive me, Ed, if it's too familiar, Mr. Shardlow, can I call him Ed, Nick, without being offensive here? He's in the UK, so I don't want to offend you. This is one of those. Anyway, Mr. Shardlow has written to us and offered this magnificent two ideas. One is that the book is the parallel series idea is alive, according to Ed Shardlow, because this Hallmark Man has so many reflections of the Ichabod in it.
Yeah.
That's a fascinating idea. I'm really excited about that because it keeps the Tetractys alive, that theory alive. And also because of the fascinating things that he's come up with to show that's the case. Then there's his theory that the Gorilla Man is Ryan Murphy. Do I need to have we put up our warning, Will Robinson, there's spoilers in this episode. It's been 2 weeks.
I think anyone who's gone through our first post Hallmark Man episode will know where we are. This is a post read podcast, and I know there are some people who haven't completed Hallmark Man yet, are still working through the Canrecchi, so they've got their eye on the prize. They'll start watching these episodes when they've finished.
It is true. We're getting comments from new readers and likes from new readers on that first post a week after the fact. I thought, why are you listening to it now? Oh, you just finished the book. Oh, okay, man. Most people don't throw their entire lives, put everything in their life on hold, to read these books. But that's great. Anyway, Ed's really challenging theory is that Ryan is the Gorilla Man.
There's a lot to like about that theory.
Yeah. And again, I've urged Ed to write it up. He's got a life, but he is going to appear on the show. Maybe we'll write it up for him, whatever. He sent us all the notes, and and to include the reasons that it won't work, that it's not Ryan. But he has answers for some of the more obvious objections to it, which are really quite good. So anyway, that's a fascinating fan theory because you're told what a great guy Ryan is all the time throughout this book. And yet you're also given the suggestion that, hey, there's something wrong with this guy. He's kind of creepy. I mean, the whole alcohol thing, that was a shocker, right? And then there's the parents thing and Ryan's not that great a guy. But the idea that Ryan is Magilla Gorilla, oh my goodness, that's just sick. That he may have painted the G on the door. I mean, wow, this is some great stuff. Because who knows about the gorilla more than he does? That's just, and what it would mean to Robin. I think he knows that until he separates her from Strike, he has no chance. Yeah. As much as Strike has given Ryan the middle initial F for a word that we won't say on our podcast. That is doubly the case for Murphy, who knows he can't say anything bad about Strike because Robin will come unhinged.
Yes.
All right. So those are those theories, and those ideas are worth unpacking. And I'm looking forward to having Ed write these up or appear on the podcast to discuss them. But those theories aren't on the level of Charlotte was murdered or Robin is sterile, that we ran up the flagpole after running grave. Now, what do you think of the thoughts about the big twist with the Strike series from the plot lines of Hallmarked Man? We've been set up to miss in the last two turns of the series. Now, is it the romance? Is it, are we going to see something? I mean,
I mean, it could be. So if you were going to read this as there's going to be a narrative misdirection in terms of the romance, what does she set us up for? So this is not the first time that a shocking declaration has been given on the stairs of the agency office. And the fandom then waits over a year, and we pick up the book and find out everyone's entirely ignored what was said on the stairs in the previous. So if we're going to say Rowling is setting us up, she's setting us up for a disappointment. She's setting us up for, here we go again. And I found fans on Reddit that essentially gave up on Hallmarked Man. So they got halfway through the book. Nobody's talking about the elephant in the room. They went to the last chapter and threw the book away. And they've said they're going to buy the next book and they're going to read the last chapter. And if they're not where they want them to be, that's it. I'm not going to buy the last one in the series. So but people are invested in this romance, but Rowling has set us up for a disappointment. Now, narrative misdirection says what nobody is expecting is we pick up the next book, and from the first chapter, it is a whirlwind romance. That would be a surprise.
That's what I got from the stairwell scene when she pushes him away crying and says, I'm not going to do to Ryan what Matt did to me. Well, Matt started an affair before she'd broken it off with Robin. That was like, I'm going to Ryan and telling him it's over. And I'm coming back to the bottom of the stairs and I'm going to embrace my partner. That was like, wow, that's the happiest ending we could possibly have expected. Strike goes into free fall because I don't know what he was expecting. He thought she was going to expect, embrace him on the stairs. What kind of naivete is that?
But we can't get happily ever after from the first chapter of Strike 9.
Well, it would be real misdirection.
It would be real misdirection. I think we are going to get romance. We are going to get happy, fuzzy feelings before it all starts to turn sour. I think there needs to be a second declaration and a second offer of marriage. And I think that's going to come in book 10.
Okay. There's one thing that Psyche picture. I mean, we're going to talk about we're going to do the Cupid and Psyche show.
Yeah.
But there's one thing, Ryan's name. This is not Cupid and Psyche. This is Castor and Pollux, the other myth that's in this, that we've been talking about really since the very beginning. Robin as the driver and the psychologist, whatever. But that and Strike as the boxer. That's that pairing off. The in the myth, Castor and Pollux die. They're killed by the sons of Neptune.
Well, they're Argonauts, aren't they?
Yeah.
Castor is killed by two Argonauts.
And so Ryan Murphy means the sea warrior.
Son of the sea warrior.
Yeah. So forgive me, that's the closest we're going to get to, I think, to the sons of Neptune. That Murphy's going to turn ugly. The Magilla gorilla here, whether he's the gorilla man or not, he's not going to take this. I mean, his life is destroyed. But at the Met, and we've met his family. They're not going to be very sympathetic. He's going to turn, ugly.
There's a lot to like in that, but the storyline, I think, can go one of two ways, and both using this mythological archetype. It goes Castor and Pollux. It is essentially not romantic, but is fraternal. That's the friendship route. If that happens, Strike dies. Or it goes Cupid and Psyche. And the culmination of Cupid and Psyche is the marriage, is the wedding.
Yeah, but the wedding is otherworldly.
Yeah.
Now, Strike mentions star-crossed lovers quite a few times. The fact that maybe Ryan murders them both at the end of book 10, and that's we have the Romeo and Juliet finish or something. It's anyway. This is getting into. I mean, as long as it's misdirection, I'm on board with it. It has to be really crazy, and I think we get some clues about from the very first chapter. We are pushed heavily into the sanctification, the canonization as a saint of Ted Nancaro, as the proper man and everything that's right. I mean, even Johnny Rokeby starts talking about a proper woman. They're talking about Lita, and Strike says he's going to take all of Rokeby's money and give it to the lifeguard, charity in memory of his Uncle Ted and everything. But he makes this one comment in that conversation that it just blows my mind, where he says, "I got this hair from my Cornish grandfather." Now, because Rokeby is saying that it's from the lead singer for Blue Oyster Cult. Now that I'm sorry, Nick, but that was a big red flag. That here he is talking to his father that he didn't like, but he's talking about his father that he does like.
Yes.
Ted Nancaro. And that's set up from the very beginning that Ted Nancaro was everything good and honest and right and wonderful. And it's his 3 rules of life that are driving him really in a very bad direction, in this book. Instead of just saying, hey, Robin, let me be honest with you. I'm in love with you. Can we talk about this? Instead, he goes through this. Well, you're the one who told me this. He's channeling Charlotte through Uncle Ted.
He is. Yeah. So Ted's advice, don't let the other man change your game plan, is fine if you haven't got a really bad game plan.
Yeah, if your game plan is from your dead, Lady Berserko, okay. So I think the pointer here is incest.
So that chapter is really important, isn't it? That's not in there for padding or filler. So that background we have that we've never heard before of the Nancaros is important.
Yeah, I mean, we get Trevik Nancaro and what bad man he is.
Yeah.
His name just means large estate owner and Stag Valley. It's a specific part of Cornwall that the city doesn't exist anymore. But that bad grandfather there's something really weird in that family that we still haven't learned, right? Because there's this big gap between Ted and his younger sister. They're
Yes.
raised by different parents.
Yeah.
She's raised by her crazy grandmother, who's unnamed, and Ted is raised by his cruel father. Now, the dates, you've actually done some work on this. The dates
Yeah.
don't work in terms of Trevick being Strike's father. It can't be. I got this care from my corner's grandfather.
But there's problems with the chronology anyway. We don't know birth dates for Ted, Joan, or Trevick, or his wife, or his mother. We've got no real frame of reference.
Wow.
So what we do know is that there's this age gap. So we know when Trevick's wife died, Leda and Ted's mother, we know that Leda or Peggy was 2, and we know that Ted was 16. So there's this 14-year age gap. At that point, Peggy Leda goes to stay with her grandmother, that's Trevick's mother. And we know that Ted only stayed around until he was 18, so another 2 years. Now, he could have joined the army at 16, but he would have needed his father's permission. At 18, he can join the army without his father's permission, and he was out of there. So he's joined the army at 18. That's when Leda was 4. Then we hear that Ted wouldn't come back until he heard of his father's premature death. When he came back and married his sweetheart that he'd been writing to for the last 7 years. Now, if we assume that he's been writing to his sweetheart when he left St. Maur's at the age of 18, that puts Leda at the point that Trevick dies at 11 years old.
That's right.
So 4 years old when he leaves, and then 11 years old when her father's died, which means well out of range for any incest that would result in a child.
So Trevick is off the board.
Yeah, but we don't know. So it may be that Ted only started corresponding with Joan 7 years after he left the army, which meant he was in the army for 14 years. Then it's just possible. It's just possible that.
Remember, she has to conceive that child.
Yeah.
When, in the vicinity of the time that she's sleeping with Johnny Rogeby.
Yes.
If it's an incestuous relationship, that's still well out of Trevick range.
I think that's still well out of range, but we have another issue with the chronology. Thanks to Dr. Freeman, Louise, her timeline still hasn't been bettered. I hope she updates it and puts it on the farting sofa lounge. So the issue we've got is, again, one of the few fixed points is when Strike is 5 years old, he meets Dave Polworth. So it's the first time that Leda leaves Strike and Lucy with Ted and Joan. So Ted and Joan are together. Ted has left the army because they're together because his dad died and he left the army. Now that occurs in 1979. That's when Strike is 5 years old. But we also know from Troubled Blood that Ted was in the Falkland Islands in 1982. So something there doesn't work.
Could he have been called up from reserves for the Falklands?
From the Royal Military Police, unless he was doing something very, very special, I'd say no. Royal Marines, if you were still walking, they gave you a rifle. You were going out there.
Say yes, the same thing. Yeah.
Any recent leavers, but military police, not so much.
Yeah. Oh well, I think the Falklands thing may be a gaffe on Rolling's point, because it's just
I suspect so. But
the
but
dates
that
don't line up.
but that chronology, the distinct gap we've got between their ages, that 7 years corresponding, the name Peggy, Trevick, and his mother, that's all important. That was put in there for a reason.
Yeah,
We
and
just
I
don't
think
know what it is yet.
and the default assumption is that, for me, is that it's misdirection. That
Yeah,
and that especially the whole proper man speech and its echo in the Ropey conversation about Peggy Lita means that we do know that one of the golden threads, probably number one on most people's golden thread lists, is not lost child, though it should be, is bad dad.
yeah.
And I'm thinking that Ted was the bad dad. That Ted, be it in some drunken thing, maybe despair about his wife being unable to conceive a child, whatever it was, some drunken binge with Lita, and they conceived the child. And then what are we going to do about this? Who's the daddy? Well, she's been sleeping with Johnny Rokeby, and she's in grief because she married. He says that he married a woman a month after he slept with her in New York. Wow, it looks like the stars have aligned. And
Now, and that is a bit of information that you could pick up from that initial chapters of Hallmarked Man, is that Ted and Lida effectively never grew up as brother and sister. They lived in different houses from the ages of 2 to 4, and then he left and went in the army.
And yet they both had, they obviously shared biological parents.
Yeah.
And she almost certainly experienced some abuse from Trevick. Just the fact that she was not in his house. Now if the incest thing just strikes you as just being totally bizarre, Rowling's been pointing to incest for quite some time.
Yeah.
Not only do we have all the conflict between brothers and sisters, which is not obviously incestuous in itself, but we have the Christmas twins in Career of Evil. We have Noel and Holly Brockbank in Career of Evil. Really a nightmare situation where not only is she being abused by her father, but also by her brother. And that goes into some time of age. Then we have Rosmere home, as again, B. Grove says the single most, what was it again? You have it memorized.
Epigraphically indebted work.
Okay. And that work, Rosmere's home, ends with Rebecca West being, quite clearly having had an incestuous relationship with her father. And they commit suicide consequent to that. Not the father, but she and her lover, commit suicide at that. We have the conception of Dennis Creed in Troubled Blood, which is the, probably the ugliest.
Yeah.
I mean, this is an ugly taboo. This is the hallmark male violence issue. The father molesting his own daughter. Someone who's totally dependent and defenseless, totally beholden to him for protection, and he betrays that. I mean, seriously, father-daughter incest is as low as you can go in terms of violence against women.
And betrayal of trust. Betrayal of the ideal of the family.
That's right. I mean, there's nothing more painful. And Rowling, if you haven't picked this up, she has to think about violence against women. So the idea that incest, and Dennis Creed is the monster that he is consequent to that, and that his growing up with this bad dad is because his mother leaves him. That's a real hallmark. And then we get, not running grave. We get
Hallmarked Man, Decima.
Hallmarked Man, where the central case is turns on incest. That's the big surprise of the finish, is that these poor man and woman, they were brother and half brother and sister, and they have a child. The child seems to be in good shape. So the child certainly is loved. It certainly has loving parents that are in a good relationship with each other. But they're not going to live together as husband and wife. So I mean, we've had the incest thing hitting us again and again and again, and then we get Ted as being this wonderful hero. I'm sorry, Nick, that really has got me leaning towards, especially when he says, I got this hair from my Cornish grandfather. That seals the deal for me that Strike is the product of an incestuous relationship. What do you do with that? I mean, that's at least as crazy as Robin is sterile, I think.
It is at least. I mean, if you look at motivation, you could argue that Ted is this stalwart of the community, this proper man, desperate to look after Strike and Lucy because he's trying to atone for what he's recognized that he's done. And maybe Leda doesn't look on it as being so bad because they've never lived together as brother and sister. She was out of her grandmother's house as soon as she could. The guy from Strike, the guy who took the fare to Truro.
And that is explained by Trevik being violent and that her just wanting to get out of that crazy, the grandmother and her father. Get me out of here. We've got Peggy Leda's escape from Cornwall. We've got Ted's early enlistment, right out of the gun. Everything is get away from Trevik. So they're kind of strangers to each other. But then we have the weird charity of Joan and Ted with respect to Peggy Leda's behavior and the children. I mean, why do they put up with this? I mean, they could have definitely have called in the NHS, not the NHS. They called in
social services.
Yeah, CPS in the United States, Child Protective Services, and said, "Look, stop this. This woman is crazy. She's living in slums with these children, and yet they put up with it." I think that Joan and Ted know that this is one secret they don't want spilled, and that if they push Peggy Leda, she'll spill that. So we have these things that are explained, or at least seem more understandable in light of the possibility that Ted and Leda are mother and father to Cormoran Strike. Certainly, we have the hatred that Peggy Leda has for spending time with her family in the West Country. I mean, she hates Cornwall. Now that's a wow theory, right? But it's misdirections on steroids. But she's given us, fair warning in a way of where she's headed. If Strike is the fruit of an incestuous union, I don't know the genetics about this. There's all sorts of problems with if you have an incestuous union and there's child consequent to it, the odds of that child having birth defects skyrocket. I don't know if the children of incest then have difficulties conceiving children, or whether the children have issues. I don't think so, but I don't know the genetics on that.
No.
But we do know that this whole book, Hallmarked Man, turns on, it's like Ed's Ichabod idea on having children and difficulties having children and struggles with this and that. And we've had the mystery of why Strike doesn't want to have children. Now, you can say it's because he felt that he was an unwanted child.
Well, he says he's an accident. And
that's right.
Why would he want that accident to continue?
Right. And I think it's quite clear that he wasn't an accident, that he was the product of, he thought he was the product that Leda wanted him as desperately as a child because she was in love with Rokeby.
Yeah. And
the pregnancy trap failed, and so she got instead a child through her older brother. that leads us to one of the, a couple of the scarier twists inside the story, and that is, first of all, there's the Peggy Margaret thing. When you hear Peggy Margaret Lita, you know that's her name. To those people that are used to us talking about the pearl and Christian symbolism, that means that the odds of her death being a sacrificial death, because the pearl is a symbol of Christ, that she killed her. The misdirection is that we've all been told all along that it wasn't suicide, she was murdered. The misdirection would be if it was actually suicide, that she killed herself basically because she thought that Whitaker had sexually abused Lucy, and that was too much of a nightmare for her, and she didn't want Switch to grow up with Whitaker, and she didn't want Whitaker to go free, and the only way she could do that would be to frame him for her death, which explains the whole heroin thing. Now, that's one switch on the Peggy Margaret side, but on the other side, we know that Peggy Margaret, excuse me, there's always been a mystery. Why didn't she take that money? Why did that money all accumulate from Rokeby? Why didn't she use it? All she had to do was say how she was using it for Strike. But I think that meeting with Rokeby at the studio had an effect on Lita as much as it did on her son, which is to say that she finally had to look at this man that she really thought she loved. That, I mean, according to Rokeby, they were quite the couple. She made him laugh. He truly loved and admired her, even while he was engaged to another woman, Johnny Rokeby. But that Lita, when she sees him in that studio and is literally destroyed by him, they're yelling and screaming at each other inside that studio, she finally decides this is a bad man.
Yeah.
And while she was trying to spend that money to start businesses and things like that could support her family, Joan goes to him and says, hey, the kids haven't even got shoes. You know, she's keeping up her lifestyle and doing all these things. So Rokeby puts the money behind a pretty thin firewall to say, you've got to tell me, you got to give me the receipts for the kids, and then you can use this money. And she refuses to do it because she's ashamed. She knows the child isn't Rokeby's. She knows that he doesn't love her, and she has a conscience. She won't take the money because it's really not right that she gets that money. If she can't use it to start a business or do something to support her family, then she doesn't want to use it. We got echoes here of the Lancaster man. You know, it was, you know, Dino Lancaster's Dino's son, who wants to get that Neff because it belongs to him, you know, and he wants to use it to start a new life and such. We get that so Lita wants that money in order to start a business, support her family, get her legs underneath herself. And she deserves that because she was Rokeby's lover and they cared for each other. And, you know, so what if Cormoran isn't his son? But she's not going to take his money to spend it on Cormoran because that's just not somehow honest. I can see, you know, when Rokeby says she was a proper woman, you're supposed to read what Dave Polworth said about her, about the word proper, you know, and about Ted being that way. Now, that's the Peggy Lita committed suicide theory. Then there's also Uncle Ted did it. If she decides enough of this, I've got to tell Rokeby that he's not the father. Keep your stupid money. And maybe she wants to sell the story to the newspapers. Maybe she's just, you know, she wants to explain to Whitaker why this money doesn't exist. And the word somehow gets back to Ted Nancaro that the incestuous relationship thing is about to come out, or at least there's going to be another DNA test, and it's going to come out, you know, who did this. And so he kills her, or Dave Polworth does at his direction. But it's that Lita Strike is killed by the ultimate bad dad, her older brother.
But all of this, I guess, rests on that not DNA, because it was too early for a DNA test, but this paternity test being fiddled in some way.
Which brings us to another theory, doesn't it? Yeah, this is something that again on the moderator channels has been a live issue since the first reading of Hallmarked Man. Is that Strike goes to all this trouble to set up this test, the DNA test that he's going to give to Bijou at the Savoy Hotel. All the things about the
brown paper bag.
Yeah, I mean, what do we see of that test, Nick? You know, the swab and a box.
We see a cardboard box. Cormoran has to take a cheek swab and mix it up in the liquid, essentially. Now, I'd like to think it is in a tamper-proof sealed container once it's complete. I'd like to think there'd be an evidence label on there that Cormoran could sign. He's a policeman. He knows about chain of custody. But honestly, why go through all this cloak and dagger when all he needs is an appointment at a clinic? Bijou should be nowhere near it. So the clinic can say, this is the man, we saw his driving license, we took ID, we took the cheek swab, and this has not been out of our possession until we did the DNA analysis.
Or even better, to me, what's astonishing to me is that he leaves this to Bijou to do.
Yeah.
Why doesn't he do it? Why doesn't he say to her, let me take the swabs right here, dear. Your cheek, his cheek, my cheek. Yes. I've got this. I'll get the results. I'll have this stuff done. No, he leaves this to this woman who's been working a pregnancy trap. I mean, this not much with him, maybe with him, but certainly with the then QC.
It's very strange. But also, I mean, consider Honey Badger Humboldt. So this high flying QC, extremely clever man. He decides he's going to be happy with the paternity, that this child is his, if one man in London can confirm that he's not the father. Really? With Bijou?
That's right. Seriously. And if he was as foolish as Strike was, and simply gave her a swab, she can get whatever she wants out of that. I mean, this is really daft. We haven't seen any of these tests. The attorney that Rokeby and Strike go to, he doesn't even. He's got such power that he says we have the evidence, and they accept that without seeing the evidence.
Yeah. He's got a text. He's got a text from Bijou saying, "Don't worry, it's not yours." That's the evidence.
Yeah. So I think that, in terms of real misdirection here, in addition to Bad Dad Ted and the incest line, which is pretty shocking and crazy. All right. So the really big twist is that Strike is the father of Bijou's baby, which is, wait for it, that he's the mirror image echo of what Lita and Ted did back in the day to Johnny Rokeby, to set him up. Okay, so that Rowling's biggest twist is that Strike is not Rokeby's offspring, and that he and Rockstar really only have in common their rising from nothing per Rokeby's conversation, and more important, having been deceived by mother's springing pregnancy traps. Strike by Bijou's negative test, Rokeby by Peggy Lita's positive test. And this turns the world upside down with respect to Strike's self-understanding and his appreciation for Rokeby. He's now the father of a child he doesn't want and forced to accept responsibility for. Only Rokeby turns out to have been a much better father than Strike thought he was, and almost a good guy compared to the callous Cormoran, who wants nothing to do with this child of Bijou. Now, that's a real twist. Okay. That to me is a lot of fun. That's everything is just put into an absolute spin cycle at that point. Because Strike, while claims to hate Ropey and all these things. He's grown up all this time thinking that he's somehow a hero because he doesn't use the name and he doesn't accept his money. But he's still known as Johnny Ropey's son. He's Zeus's kid. He's that's his thing of notoriety. And while all the time he's saying, he's kicking against the pricks here. He's saying, oh, that's not who I really am about. I have my own name and my own identity. His identity still is as Johnny Ropey's son. When he finds out that he's actually the fruit of incest, what is that going to do to that guy's head?
Yeah.
And everybody else's head about him. I mean, that's misdirection. That's the shocking thing. Now, Rowling is writing a 10-book series, and we have the Lita issue, Who Killed Lita, as the backdrop. Seemingly, what if the bigger issue though is, why did someone kill Lita Strike? It's because of this incestuous background. And what does that mean for Cormoran and Robin's relationship if he has this child? Now, for me, it seems like a happy ending. If Bijou's baby is actually Cormoran's, well, then Robin gets to be a mother. If they get married, Robin gets to be a stepmother to this child, and she gets all the fun of being a mom, without the responsibilities that keep her from doing things that she might not have done if she was a biological mother.
So question, you asked me just a couple of hours ago if I could recall what Bijou's baby was called, and I can't find it in the text anywhere. So I don't know if we know that. Maybe somebody could pop it in the comments if we're too slow to positively locate it.
It's Autovasian or something. It starts off. It seemed to be like Octo, like it was the 8th child or something, but I think it's Otto something.
Okay.
And so it's and we don't know what that means.
No.
We don't know if Bijou has done something, some signal there that this is Strike's child. Maybe she's signaled this. Anyway, that these predictions. Strike is the father of Bijou's baby. And people have been talking about that since the whole thing started out. But then now seeing it in this context of Rowling, giving us that whole Savoy adventure, like Strike is really being responsible about getting this test. And yet anybody who thinks about it says that wasn't very responsible. That he was really careless in the actual testing of it. And then the whole backdrop of incest in the novels and Ted as proper man, that to me, that's a scary picture, and it also makes Johnny Ropey seem like a really good guy. that was I really enjoyed. I reread that chapter last night, and I thought, wow, Ropey comes off as a real decent human being. He's a repentant man.
You're right. The only thing I thought on rereading that is, yes, he comes across as grounded together. He's using exactly the right words with Strike. I'm wondering how much of that is from Prue. How much was scripted by Prue?
Well, we certainly know that Al Ropey has cued him into things that really angered Strike.
Oh yeah.
All the things like, I know you owe me taking money, whatever.
Just one beer. Just one beer.
Yeah, and there's also the Filipino house servants.
Yeah.
Contrast that with the Roper Chard owners interview and their relationship.
Yeah.
Clearly Ropey loves these people and they adore him. He's treated them right. So as soon as I heard that you weren't going out to dinner, I started to make you a sandwich.
Yeah. And by the way, I didn't push him down the stairs.
Right. That's I didn't give him prostate cancer. That's seriously. We're given all these things about Ropey finally being a really nice guy.
Yeah.
That when Strike is being just pig-headed throughout that entire interview, makes me think, wow, you're about to get the comeuppance from hell, Cormoran. You're going to find out that, you are the father of this child. He isn't. And yet, he's been nothing but graceful throughout this whole thing. And you don't want anything to do with that child. That scene at Wardle's home where he's got 18-month-old Liam.
Yeah.
And Strike has this picture of himself being that father to Bijou's, it's a daughter, right?
Yes, daughter.
And his, just what a nightmare. Bijou's going out and this now. I thought, well, Cormoran, you spent your childhood, adolescence, and adulthood hating Johnny Rokeby because he didn't accept responsibility for his offspring. And now you're saying you don't want to do that? Shame on you. If you're the daddy. Oh, well,
yeah.
So we spent this whole conversation doing predictions. What we put down these markers. We'll write this up.
We do need to write it up. We also need to remind ourselves and everybody else, we're on week 2. We're on week 2. We don't have an idea. Yeah. We've got a long time to wait for the next book to come out. I think but we've got enough, haven't we, to start working things up, to start, scripting it out, seeing what works, what doesn't.
I haven't done the Christian symbolism. I haven't done the literary alchemy. I haven't done the psychomachia. I haven't done the ring composition. We're going to talk about mythology next week. We haven't done the intertextuality, which is really the parallel series idea, as well as the series as a ring, but or whatever it turns out to be. But this is we have spent now we've done one tool which has references to golden threads and to the lake. That Rowling has a bad dad. That's still the defining, childhood relationship for her is bad dad. And you know what? I think we're getting a wild bad dad thing here. If I'm right, that I'm going to blame you for this, Nick. that Strike is the product of incest and Bijou is his child. And that Ted and Dave almost, according to this theory, Ted and Dave, they go right to the top of the list again as the probable murderer of Lita Strike. Whew. Let's see how fandom deals with that one, Nick.
So, wow, what's week 3 going to bring us?
Well, I'm going to continue to chart the book. That's going to probably take me 5, 6, 7 weeks. But we're also going to talk about maybe this will be that whole conversation will be about the mythology backdrop of this series, which, it really, when I talk to people about Cormoran Strike, I want to talk to them about mythology. And even the most serious readers of Cormoran Strike really don't get the mythology and its place in her life. And it has a giant place in her life in terms of the lake and her education. Yeah. And it has, in terms of the shed, every book that she's written almost has a mythological backdrop to it. Sometimes she's playing with it. She's rewriting the myth. It's like fractured fairy tales, but still it's there. It's there. It's Orestes. It's Theseus.
I think short of tattooing on her left hand this time, it's the myth, stupid. We've got Cupid and Psyche drop. We have to really dive into that. This is where the series is going.
It is funny. You've told me before that the things that you struggle with in terms of those 7 tools is mythology and psychomachia. What I want to talk about in terms of the 3rd week too, is how to read this book, because this is the first book that we've had since we've been talking about 4th generation Rowling studies. And I talked about this a lot, I think, before Hallmarked Man came out. The best way to read these things is at 4 levels, and that you really have to concentrate on getting the 3rd and 4th levels. But you can't read the book at 4 levels simultaneously. All those levels have to come through the surface story, When
Yeah.
the surface story is as complicated as this one is, you have to do the work to really get that surface story down to then go into the moral, the allegorical, and the sublime levels. But if you don't have the surface story down, I mean, yeah, all those things are beneath the surface story, but they only come through it. You can't just, scrape off the surface level, all the icing off, and there's the cake. No, you got to eat the icing and the cake, or you don't get to the cake. Torture that metaphor. So we're going to have to talk about that and the Cupid and Psyche elements, the mythology thing. And I want to talk about the other tweets that Rowling came out with this week, which were largely in wake of the Charlie Kirk assassination. Prayers for his family and for Tyler Robinson's family. And Tyler Robinson, I guess, if you're a better Christian than I am, forgive me. Those tweets were some of the most revealing tweets Rowling's ever had about the God-shaped hole in her heart and such, and her examining her beliefs and discarding some beliefs. But there obviously just enormous blind spots in terms of the beliefs that Rowling will not examine. And about that, the kind of pedestrian faith and pedestrian skepticism about faith. There's an obstacle to that, which is fairly, obvious to people that have looked at the lake even casually. And so we have to talk about that as well. Yeah. But still, I mean, there's so much to talk about, Nick.
I know. I know.
Another thing I want to talk about, we talked about just before this show, is that there's a Georgian writer. He writes in Russian and Georgian. His name is Grigory Chakartishvili. And forgive me if I brutalize that. But he writes as Boris Akunin. And what he's most famous for is a 19-book series where the hero is a detective named Arist Van Doren. And what's really notable about that series, it's a brilliant series. I read 16 of the 19 books. I read the first 16, which are really the set. And now he's written 3 books that are add-ons. He lives in London, incidentally, and he's totally in exile. He came out really harshly against Putin's invasion of the Ukraine, and so he's been tried in absentia, and basically he cannot return to Russia and not go to jail, probably his death. Now, the Arist Van Doren series, though, is peculiar in that each one of the books, and they're detective novels, and they're thrillers too. Each one of them is a different genre within that genre, different type of book inside that book. And I think Rowling has been doing something very much like that inside the Cormoran Strike series.
Yeah.
Like she told us, I think in the acknowledgments to Running Grave, that this was the cult book.
Yeah. We know that it was very explicitly Troubled Blood was a cold case. She wanted to do a cold case.
Which is funny because we had a cold case in Cuckoo's Calling, but that book was also, Who Killed Roger Ackroyd, whatever. It was like a very famous, spin on the person that is paying for the case to be solved is the person who killed the person. And then we had the most famous murder mystery, which is Hamlet, in the next book. Yeah. The Jacobean revenge drama. She's basically playing off the whole Hamlet thing. Now we have to go through all and then Ian Rankin's novel, Career of Evil. Yeah. It's like we're getting, types of things all the way through these books. And this one she described as a locked room mystery.
Yes.
Now that's curious on at least a couple of levels there. And we need to talk about that. I mean, for example, Nick, the vault wasn't a locked room, right?
No. So maybe it was when she first thought of it and then decided, no, this isn't going to work. But no, the vault was open. So it was not a locked room mystery. But do you know what is a locked room mystery?
What?
The murder of Charlotte Campbell. That bathroom was locked. They had to break down the door to get in.
So it couldn't have been a murder, Nick. Had to have been a suicide.
course.
How could the person have gotten out of the room? Gosh, and you know what? There's only like 17 different solutions to these locked room mysteries. About pushing the key out from the other side and having the piece of paper to draw it back in. I mean, there's 10 different ways to do that, but 100. Who knows? But it's definitely a genre within the whole detective fiction thing, the locked room mystery. And I'm confident that Rowling knows all the ways. So when you see a locked room, an actual locked room, you should be like, oh, it's not really it's not a suicide, or what does Strike say? Because he would have had to have been an effing genie to pull that off.
That's right. In which case he wouldn't have needed the money.
So we're looking at some big reveals in these last two books. We're going to get who killed Lita Strike, who is Strike's daddy, who's Bijou's baby daddy. And all of it's going to be a surprise. All of it's going to be a shock, because that's what Rowling does. And serious readers who know that Rowling does this, they look for the push, the misdirection. And then they lean back against that and see what that is. So we put those markers down, Nick, and let's hope that people have forgotten this if none of those predictions play out.
Well, as I say, we're on week 2. When we get to week 56, people will have forgotten all about week 2.
I don't know. Well, unless they want to laugh at us. Now this is, but I will put down this marker with some confidence, is these last two books are going to be supercharged with surprises. Things that we do not expect to be true of these major characters are going to be true. And everything's going to be turned upside down. We're going to have a Deathly Hallows finish. We're going to have like, oh my gosh, Snape was a good guy. Oh my gosh, Dumbledore had a Horcrux. Dumbledore was a Horcrux. No, Harry was a Horcrux. Dumbledore was, Machiavellian crazy. All these kind of reveals are going to happen in the last two books. Really, I think we're going to have even more of a setup, a Half-Blood Prince type setup in Strike 9 that will bleed into Strike 10, where we're going to be really set up for the big twist. I
think you're right. I think 10 is going to be the Battle of Hogwarts. It's going to be shocking, and it's going to come thick and fast. But I think the completely blindsided is going to be book 9, setting us up for that.
We've once again, Nick, put ourselves, way beyond the pale in terms of what people want to hear about. But that's one of the 7 tools. There are really more than 7. There's feminism as a tool, postmodernism as a tool, psychology as a tool. But you can weave those into the other 7. I really want to keep that 7 number there, Nick. But the Lake Springs and the 14 golden threads that we've identified so far, those are the things that are going to tell us what to expect inside these books. All right. Next week, Cupid and Psyche, 4 levels of reading. And then the week after that, maybe we should do 2 of these a week. The week after that, we'll do the God-shaped hole discussion. And at that point, we'll have read it 2 or 3 times, and we'll have much more about the structure. We can talk about those things. Woo! Wild times.
Thank you, John. Great talk as always, and look forward to seeing you next week.
Yes, always, Nick. Take care.